friends. I'm Pastor Carrie. Welcome to Sunday School. I'm so glad we get to be together again this morning. We are already on chapter 8 of the story. A few good men and women. A few good men and women. It seems like God is always looking for some ordinary, good followers of the way, followers of those ancient paths, just a few good men and women that God will take and use to do extraordinary things. And in today's story, we have, frankly, a bit of a superhero. Samson is the main character of our story. We have our story card here. And Samson is really, to me, a bit of a superhero. He is certainly someone who cries out to God, who relies on God, who lives with God and invites God in to all that he finds himself involved with. And Samson has this extraordinary strength, physical strength. It says he fought a lion and won. That seems kind of superhero to me, doesn't it? It's an extraordinary gift, that God had given Samson. Let's find out a little bit more about him. First of all, let's talk about our key verse. It's from the book of Judges. Samson said, "Lord and King, show me that you still have concern for me. Please, God, make me strong just one more time." Samson is an example to us. Samson is a character in the story, in the Bible, that we want to look to, not just because he had this sort of superhuman strength, but because he knew that strength came from God. Any strength we have, last week we talked about strength and courage and bravery. Any strength or courage we have, it is so important for us to know that that comes from God. So just a few things about Samson. At birth, Samson was promised as a servant to God's work. So this is important for us too, children, young adults, youth. It is so important. From a very young age, Samson was promised to God. And I know that happens in our homes as well, in our little churches. We are intentional, we are on purpose, inviting children, young adults, youth, to follow God. When we learn to do that as a young person, as a child, it is such a good thing. And Samson was no exception. Samson became one of the judges of Israel. He had great physical strength. We've already talked about that. And he trusted God would give him strength one more time in order for God's plans to come true. So I have a box of tissues here, a box of Kleenex, because of a key phrase in this week's story. We have people again crying out to God. Crying out to God. Oftentimes when we cry, we need some Kleenex, don't we? Or a handkerchief. We need something to dry our eyes. So let's think back to our key verse in Jeremiah, the verse that has been the thread that we've pulled all through our stories. Looking to these characters, all the characters on our story cards, because they're folks who asked for the ancient paths, who responded to God's faithfulness with faithfulness. And Samson was someone who was honest. He was honest when he forgot about all that God did and all of who God was. He kind of forgot when he got into this situation with Delilah, this woman that he really loved. He thought Delilah loved him, but unfortunately Delilah was lying. Delilah was a trickster, and she was trying to find out the secret to Samson's strength. And unfortunately, Samson gave in to that. And he lost his strength. But then he remembered. He remembered the truth about who God was, about who God had made him to be, and he cried out to God. And that's the story of so often of the Israelites, God's chosen people that we're learning about in these chapters, these first chapters of the story. And it's so much a part of our story too, isn't it? We spend time remembering who God is and what God does for us and who God is calling us to be. And we find ourselves cooperating with God's love, and we have some peace, and we are finding that good way that's part of the ancient paths, and we have some rest for our souls. But sometimes we forget. We forget who God is. And when we realize, like Samson did, that we have forgotten who God is, it is so important that we cry out to God. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot. I forgot. And just like Samson, will you come and help me one more time? And God is so ready to come and help. God is so ready to hear us crying out. So let's think about our two ancient questions. Who is God, and what is God asking us? God answers whenever we call. God answers when we call. Who is God? God answers us when we call, when we cry out. And what does God want us to do? First, God wants us to remember who God is. That's so important, that when we develop that habit of always remembering, being very on purpose, very intentional, remembering who God is and what God does for us, we find that good way. That is the good way. And then if we do find ourselves having forgotten, if we say, I've forgotten who God is, then what does God want from us? God wants us to stop and immediately cry out. Cry out to God for help, for wisdom, for direction, asking again for those ancient paths. So there's comfort in this story. There's comfort. Now, let's be sure that we're not using these stories as an excuse. I say that because, I think that that's human nature. Sometimes we look to these stories and we think, oh, well, the Israelites forgot, so it's okay if I forget. God will always answer us. And that's true. But remember, God wants a relationship with us. God wants a real, meaningful, loving, transformative relationship with us. And when we're in that kind of relationship, we want to obey. We want to obey God. We want to do things God's way the first time, and live into the fullness of that picture of God that is so good. We don't want to take advantage of the fact that we know God will always hear us and respond when we call out. We want to spend our time remembering who God is and keeping that relationship healthy and alive. All right, so just a little bit of information, something that I've learned, something that somebody had to teach me that's been so important. So I want to pass that on to you. All right, friends, lots to think about. Keep going deeper and deeper into the story, going deeper and deeper into God's love for you. Remember who God is and remember all that God has done. And when you forget, when you realize that maybe you have forgotten, cry out to God like Samson did, and know that God, who is God? God answers us when we cry out. All right, friends, bye-bye. Take care.